أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أفضل الخلق أجمعين. اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد عبدك ونبيك ورسولك النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم عدد ما أحاط به علمك وخط به قلمك وأحصاه كتابك، والرضا عن أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وعلي وعن الصحابة أجمعين وعن التابعين وتابعيهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين، وعنا بهم ومعهم ومن أجلهم يا رب العالمين. We start, inshallah, guys, with the second lesson in the Islamic Theology 101 course. We are going through Al-Kharida al-Bahiya. We're basically studying Al-Kharida al-Bahiya by Imam al-Dardir. So today's lesson, inshallah, we will continue with a small introduction, a further introduction to the one that we went through last time. Just to have a little bit in-depth understanding of Aqida, ilm al-Aqida as a discipline of Islamic literature. We also will continue the rules of rational judgment, which we started last time, but don't worry, we are basically starting it so if you missed anything before, that's fine. We're going to, inshallah, start it again. And then we're going to go through the first obligation on the mukallaf. Al-mukallaf, basically a person who became responsible for his actions from a Sharia standpoint. That's a mukallaf. So what is the first obligation for that mukallaf in Aqidah? So we'll start with that further introduction we talked about, we mentioned. It's basically called the 10 introductory aspects of any discipline. That's something that the Muslim scholars has developed for their ilm, for any ilm, any discipline, any fan. We're going to go through that just in a second, the terminology that we're using for ilm. There are 10 things that you need to know, or a talib ilm, any student of ilm, need to begin with, or to start to understand, to begin with that ilm. So let's read what they compiled in that aspect, and then we're going to go through it and break it down. إن مبادئ كل علم 10 الحد والموضوع ثم الثمرة ونسبته وفضله والواضع والاسم والاستمداد حكم الشارع مسائل والبعض بالبعض اكتفى ومن درى الجميع حاز الشرف. إن is a letter that we use in Arabic to mean confirmation, to confirm something. Mabadi means the beginning of something. So if you're going to start something, there are mabadi. It's the starters, the beginning of something. Kullam means every. Ilm is translated as science, but the science usually refer to physics, chemistry, something that is a ilm tajribi, right? So the Islamic ulum, basically, we like to use the word ilm just to refer to it as there is no translation or direct translation, so we just say ilm. So that one of the terminologies that perhaps we need to bear in mind. We can also say discipline of something. So also we use that terminology as well, that word as well, to refer to ilm. We can also say fan. Fan is art, but also we use it in our context to mean ilm, right? So you can see all of those, whether you read in Arabic or in English, you might see some of those words, so you understand what is meant by. Ashara means 10. Al-Had is limit. And in this context, limit of that ilm, meaning the definition of that ilm. So that's Al-Had. Wal-Mawdu' is the scope. What is the scope of that ilm? ثم الثمرة. الثمرة, the literal meaning of it is fruit, but you can use it to mean like benefit or the value it adds. All right. So let's break it down then. As we said, إن مبادئ كل علم 10 الحد والموضوع ثم الثمرة. So any discipline has 10 essential aspects to begin with. So if you are going to begin learning something, if you are going to begin learning that علم, like علم حديث, علم تفسير, علم التوحيد والعقيدة, علم الفقه, any علم of the Sharia علوم and Islamic علوم, if you're going to begin learning one of those, you need to start with understanding and knowing what or 10 things about that علم. Definition, as we said, definition is a حد, scope, موضوع, benefits أو benefit ثمرة. ونسبته وفضله والواضع والاسم والاستمداد حكم الشارع. نسبته means its position or relation to other discipline. Okay? So علم الفقه, what is علم الفقه relation to the other discipline? علم التفسير, what is the relation to other discipline, and so on. So that you have a complete map of all the Islamic علوم, so that you can have a more holistic understanding of how every علم may benefit the other. وفضله, its value, and some scholars, instead of فضله or value, will say the aim. Why the غاية, the aim? Why do we learn it? Who started it? الواضع means who started it as a discipline on its own right. And this is very important. I need like you to pay attention a little bit here. When we say, for example, علم النحو, grammar, the Arabic grammar, it started. Who started it? Do you know? Yeah. So there are many like records, but perhaps the most applicable or closer to Sahih is that it was Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali who started it. So it is said started it by instruction from Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu wa karramallahu wajhah, or others. So regardless of who ordered it, but basically the person who started ilm al-Nahr is Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali. And then it developed after him and went through many developing stages and phases and so on. Now, the question that you need to ask yourself, hold on for a second, you're saying ilm al-Nahr started in Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali. So does that mean that before Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali, they were not saying it this way, they were saying it al-Walada or al-Waladi? So Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali came like 100-something years after the Hijrah to teach Arabs how to speak Arabic? No, that's nonsense. When we say when ilm started, we mean started as a ilm, as a discipline, documented with rules and methodology of developing it and a way to teach it as a ilm. As an information, that topic or that subject has already been there. Abu al-Aswad al-Du'ali did not invent how the Arabic speaks. He basically just studied how they spoke, collected it, and basically started documenting it so that non-Arabs or people coming to Islam who don't have an Arabic background, they start learning it, right? So these are very important concepts. When we say any of the Islamic fiqh, for example, who is the wadi of ilm al-fiqh, right? So when we are talking about Abu Hanifa, who is the wadi of madhab al-Hanafi? Abu Hanifa for sure. But does that mean there was no fiqh before that? No, it was there. But it was there as an information, not as a ilm. All right? So these are very important moving forward. I hope this is clear. والاسم, so name of the discipline or the name of the ilm, al-istimdad, source, which or what sources that ilm takes its rules from. Okay? Ruling under fiqh, which is basically حكم الشارع. الشارع means شارع, sharia, all that means the same thing. حكم, the judgment of the sharia. So what is the ruling of that حكم? Is it halal or haram to learn it? Right? Magic, for example, the sihr, magic. Is it halal or haram to learn it? Any ilmi that comes to your mind, any science even. Is it halal or haram? Any thing like that, there's a hukm, whether you are able to learn it or not. So for the ilm that you are starting, you need to know it. For sure, Islamic ulum, the Islamic disciplines, it's halal and mubah to learn. It's not haram. But sometimes it may be mandatory. Sometimes it could be recommended, right? And so on. Sometimes it may not be good. Maybe there are a lot of people who already learned fiqh. So it's unrecommended for you to learn fiqh. Maybe you go and learn something else that the ummah needs, and so on. We'll continue with that. So masailun. Masailun is the matters that ilm is looking after, is looking for. In fiqh, for example, hukm al-riba. So the riba, if you do this and this and that, a statement, a small statement of under a riba topic, that's going to be a matter, one matter, and so on. So what are the matters of that ilm? وَالْبَعْضُ بِالْبَعْضِ اكْتَفَى. It means بعض, some scholars, بعض means some. So الْبَعْضُ بِالْبَعْضِ, so some scholars with some of those aspects, اكتفى, said that's enough. So basically, not all of them in their writings, when somebody starts writing a book, for example, about even Tawheed or the Akida, sometimes a scholar, he will just say 4 or 5 things of those aspects. He will not cover them all, right? So basically, just saying some scholars did not cover all of those aspects in their writings for the textbooks, for their textbooks. And then he say, وَمَنْ دَرَى الْجَمِيعَ حَازَ الشَّرَفَ. He who learned all aspects received the honor. Right. So let's apply that to Aqidah, the ilm that we are learning here. Definition of the Aqidah is it's a discipline through which one can prove Islamic Aqidah theology, Aqidah or theology, based on conclusive evidence. And this is very, very important. Aqidah is different than any or a lot of other ulum in Islam, is that it requires to make hujjah, to make burhan, to make an evidence. That evidence that you rely on, it has to be conclusive. So for those, for example, who attended the lesson yesterday about the 40 Imam Nawawi hadith, we were talking about the weak hadith, and that weak hadith can be acted upon in certain circumstances. In Aqidah, you cannot. So Aqidah needs conclusive evidence. And we will get to that. We'll go through that in a little bit more detail. Just bear that in mind. The scope, theology or divinity, but theology, sometimes people use it as to refer to what relates to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. But in Aqidah, we talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his attributes and what we need to believe on. And also we talk about the prophets, and we talk about the ghaibiyat, the revelation, the things that we heard about, adab al-qabr, al-jannah, al-nar, all those kind of stuff, right? So the scope of ilm al-aqidah then is not just theology, it's actually, or divinity, that it just refers to Allah. No, it's also include prophets matters, or some issues related to the prophets, and the metaphysics that relates to God's revelations. What is the benefit? Why do we why do we learn Aqidah then? What is the benefit? We learn it to determine the correct creed, the correct Aqidah, the correct set of beliefs that we need to have from the incorrect one. And it's a major benefit, and that's really what we need to know. What we're learning now will give you the foundation, so that you, when you come across any Aqidah being, or a challenge of your Aqidah or whatever, you understand how to rebut it, how to go through it methodically, in a methodical way. The position relation with other discipline of ilm al-Tawheed or ilm al-Aqidah, that it's the foundation of all other discipline. It's usul din. It is called usul ad-din, not al-furu', not the branches of the deen. It's the usul. The aim is to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and gain his reward in the hereafter. That's our aim, al-ghaya. Our goal is to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. And a lot of Mufassirun said, لِيَعْبُدُون means لِيَعْرِفُون, to know me. To know me so that they are able to worship me. Because if you don't know Allah, you don't worship Him properly. So when or who documented that ilm as a ilm again? That it started with Imam from Ahlul-Sunna wal-Jama'ah perspective. It started or as a discipline by two great Imams, Imam al-Ash'ari, Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, who died 324 Hijri, and he was like his great grandparent was the son of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. And Abu Musa al-Ash'ari took his son, that son we're talking about, to the Prophet, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, blessed him and like made dua for him to bless him, and basically that blessing for Nabi alayhi salam came to him or happened to him and his dhurriya until Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari. The second Imam is Imam al-Maturidi. So in Imam al-Maturidi also, by the way, he is a descendant from Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, right? So these are great Imams, and I forgot to write when he died here. It's actually 333 Hijri. So Imam al-Maturidi died 333 Hijri. Type. What is the name of this ilm then? We call it Akida, right? We also call it Tawheed. We call it Kalam. We also call it Usul al-Din, right? So all these are names of the ilm. What are the sources of this ilm? It's Quran and Sunnah, right? So for example, do we take any rules or any aspect of that ilm from Arab's poetry? No, we don't. It's not a source. But in grammar, for example, in Arabic grammar, the ancient or the old Arabic poetry, the Sharia al-Jahili, is a great source for Arabic, because basically they are looking how Arabs were talking and the rules that they were following, right? Okay, so what is a fiqh verdict? What is a hukm al-shari'? It's mandatory to learn Aqidah on each person, right? Even by like a small amount that allow him to have a solid belief in his heart about his Aqidah, with an overall evidence or proof. But it is also mandatory on some of the Ummah that they have to learn it at a very detailed level, so that they are able to teach others, to rebut challenges, and to basically go back to the definition, prove Islamic Aqidah based on conclusive evidence. The matters is basically what's necessary, what's impossible, and what is possible, which is Ahkam al-Aql. We're going to come to that now. Do you have any questions? All right. So since there is no questions, let's take a quick quiz. All right. Every discipline, ilm, has that many aspects to begin with. Yep, the correct for sure is 10. Aqidah is an Islamic discipline that is also called. Right. So the correct answer is Tawheed, Kalam, Usul al-Din, as I said, Aqidah, and all those are the main names. Right. So is it true or false? One of the sources of Islamic Aqidah is the opinion of great scholars. Yeah, most of you got it right. It's false. The opinion of great scholars in Aqidah doesn't matter, because it is a conclusive evidence. It's not just he said that and that. And in Aqidah in particular, in Aqidah specifically, the over-reliance on some scholars and taking what they said at a face value without actually challenging it caused a lot of problems in Akida, and a lot of people deviated from the right Akida because of that. So he's a great scholar. He says something, you need to go and check, especially for you as a talib ilm, right? You need to say, okay, why did he say that? Is that correct? What is the evidence of that? A discipline through which one can prove Islamic theology based on conclusive evidence is called. So it's a kalam. It's basically ilm al-kalam. That's the definition of Aqidah, kalam, tawheed, or one of the definitions, of course, right? Now, we are going to talk about the ahkam al-aql, okay? What we started last time, so let's have a deeper dive into that. Now, we need to refer to Quran, right? Quran is our main source of like understanding of Aqidah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, had your Lord so willed, all people on earth would have certainly believed, every single one of them. Would you then force people to become believers? So basically, the belief, the Aqidah, is something that you need to reach by conviction, not by compulsion, right? That's, everybody agrees on that, I think. Now, it is not for any soul to believe except by Allah's leave. And He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will bring His wrath upon those who are unmindful. The unmindful actually is not a very accurate translation here, but that's, by the way, in Surah Yunus. The ayah says, لا يعقلون. لا يعقلون, those who do not use their intellect, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them to consider the evidence around them, which should lead them to believe in Allah. That's what it is. There are two aspects. You look at the evidence, you consider them using your intellect, and that should lead you to Allah. That's what the Quran says. The Quran says that, all right? This is the basic step, first step. And then the ayah also continues, or the surah continues to say, consider all that is in the heavens and earth, yet neither signs nor warners are of any benefit to those who refuse to believe. Again, so the Quran here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refer to the signs, the signs and the warners and the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created around you. Again, the evidence that has been presented to you to look at, consider. With all those signs, clear signs that if you apply your mind and your intellect to, should lead you to believe in Allah, in Allah's existence. If you are not using those, you are refusing to believe. You are not using what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you. Again, Surah Yunus. So this is just one example of how Quran puts a great weight on intellect and using your intellect. لا يعقلون لا يعقلون أولو الألباب, and so on. There are over 70 ayah just talking about that, or ending by that. That's people أفلا يتدبرون أفلا يعقلون, right? So applying logic and applying thinking, proper thinking, applying intellect is a necessary in Aqidah. Now, does that mean, because some people think, oh, you're using your mind, then you are basically rejecting Sunnah, rejecting? No, that's not correct. There is a difference between intellect and preference. Your preference that changes because of the place you live in, the society, the peer pressure, whatever. That is something, and the intellect that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us is something else. So what are the sources and the standard of making judgment? As I said, the first one is intellect, reason, mind. All these are words we use to refer to the same thing. And intellect, reasoning, is something that your mind mandates it, whether it's mandates its existence or not, or its possibility. It's something that your mind cannot accept something else, right? Like, for example, saying a part of something is smaller than the whole. this is my hand, right? Anybody hands like that, right? And then those are my fingers in my hand. My fingers are part of my hand. My hand is all this. Okay? Can my finger be bigger than my hand? What do you think? I don't think we need to, right? It's clear, or maybe it's not that clear. Let me explain further. It can't, because even if you imagine, yeah, your finger may become bigger, may become like that. Okay, so if it becomes like that, it will be more than this part of my hand. Yeah, but the definition of hand is all thing, all that, including my finger. So even if one of my fingers became that much, now my hand is from here to here, so it's still bigger. So it doesn't matter, regardless of how big or how large my fingers become, or or became bigger and bigger, my hand is going to be more than its parts. That's something clear, right? That is what we're talking about. It's something that your mind cannot reject if you're correct. I mean, for a majnoon, somebody who's lost his mind, yeah, everything goes, right? Also, a causal link, something happens on its own. Nothing happens in its own. If it happened, then something caused it. A causal link is a must. Or a part of intellect. If you broke that and started saying, yeah, things may happen on its own, then your judgment is not reasonable. It's not based on intellect. It's based on something else. Maybe it's a new philosophy you are inventing, and good luck with it. But it's out of the boundaries of intellect and intellectual judgment and rational judgment. Okay, so that's the first part of first source or standard that we use to make judgment. The second part is, or the second source is basically the customarily or normalcy or convention, something that is happening like in our world. That's what we used to, something that we used to. So again, humans don't fly by nature. Okay, so yeah, I mean, if we're talking from a normalcy point of view, and I'm asking you, can human fly or not? You'll say human cannot fly. It's impossible for a human to fly. From what aspect? From what standard? From what source? From a customarily or normalcy point of view. Okay. Also, how things are naturally. The sun. We know the sun. It rises from the east and sets in the west. There is one moon. There is it's not two moon. It could have been 3, 5. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have created 2 suns for us. He could have done a lot of things. All that is mumkin, right? But now, from a normalcy point of view, it's just one sun. It's one moon, right? Gravity from top to down. That's again, it's physics. There is also the Sharia source or standard, revelation. It's the do and don'ts based on the jurisprudence, the Quran, the Sunnah, the scholarly consensus, and so on. Al-Ijma', Al-Quran, what Quran said, all that. Quran says do not do. Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam say in the hadith, do this, don't do that. This is Sharia, right? So the ahkam of Sharia, we take it from revelation and Quran and Sunnah and so on. Now, any statement made, we call proposition in that ilm. And you take that statement, that proposition, and you apply it or present it to any one of these to come up with a judgment, depend on that situation. So if we are in the context of a Sharia, something, is it haram or halal or something like that, what is the statement? We say, for example, al-riba haram. That's a statement, that's a proposition. We go to Sharia. Is that true or false? Yes, it's true. Riba haram. What are the evidence? Quran said that, Nabi said that, scholars said that, and so on. Right? this is a post or something that a former atheist said very long time ago or some time ago, and actually I find it fascinating. It's really accurate. It's really good, and that's what our scholars have been saying hundreds and hundreds of if not more, of years ago. Our Salaf and our great scholars, all of them said that these things because it's rational, it's the intellect, it's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in us. This is how we are wired. So he was saying to continue in atheism, I would need to believe that nothing produces everything. Right? That's impossible based on the intellect. What we're talking here, remember? Intellect and reasonable thinking, the rules of the mind, it can't. Right? Nothing produces everything. That can't happen. Non-life produces life. Again, it can't. It doesn't make sense. Randomness produces fine-tuning. Chaos produces information. Unconsciousness produces consciousness. Non-reason produces reason. Basically, that's like the punchline or the last, which basically just combine everything. Non-reason cannot produce reason. That's the thing, right? And then he's saying a very nice like statement at the end. I simply didn't have that much faith, because those who challenge religion are saying, yeah, it's just based on faith. It's not based on mind or based on ilm or in science, or there is no evidence and so on and so forth. That's nonsense, because we don't have evidence for atheism as well. It just that's again a leap of faith as well. So he's saying I didn't have that much faith to believe to continue to believe in atheism. It just doesn't work, because you reject what you are wired on, what your mind urging you to believe in, like the reason, because it's something that your mind cannot fathom, right? So you forego with that. You just put that aside and start thinking there may be other reason that science has not yet discovered that would prove that the universe came from nothing, right? So that's even a more faith required to believe in the non-believer. So if you are saying that believers just have a lot of faith to believe in God, there is no evidence. Actually, there is a lot of evidence. The evidence is your mind. Your mind, if you apply logic to it, you have to reach that conclusion. The only way you go out of that is if you put your mind aside, if you put your intellect aside and started thinking out of that. And those the philosophies that challenge religion, that's what they do. They basically put aside intellect. They say no, the intellect is not what governs everything. There's some other things that we don't know yet. We haven't discovered. There are some signs about it, or like indications that there might be something that we should be believing in, and so on and so forth, right? So it's all nonsense, at least in our point of view. Right. Let's take a quick poll. Now we talked about the sources of judgment. We talked about the intellect and the Sharia and normalcy. Can Sharia contradict rational judgment? So can Quran, ayah from Quran, or a hadith sahih, authentic, can it contradict your rational judgment? Okay. Again, rational judgment is not preference, is not preferable. Rational judgment is something that all people with a proper mind should agree on. Right? Yeah. No, the answer is no, it can't. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks you in the Quran to look around, apply your logic, and that would lead you to existence of God, as we just saw. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you that, how can that be contradictory? If there is a contradiction, then non-believers of Allah's existence can go in judgment day and say, Allah, applied logic, I couldn't reach you. You have no hujjah over me, Allah. You cannot put me, it is going to be unfair to put me in hellfire. Right? So the answer is no, it can't. The Sharia cannot contradict, because if it contradicts, that basically opened the door for people who don't believe in God to go to heaven. Why would they? Right? Okay. Maybe I'll say that now as well. With other religions, for example, those who believe in Trinity, for example, our brothers and sisters in humanity, everybody, as Islam, we basically just love everybody. We hope that everybody see the truth. Our message in this life is trying to present the proper Islamic principles and logic. Put the evidence in front of anybody and let them think. So what they would say is, when you're telling them, for example, about Trinity, they will say it's not a matter of intellect, it's not a matter of mind, it's a matter of belief. So they believe that their Sharia, their set of beliefs and Akida can contradict logic. There's no problem. And so see where that led. It led from a perspective of Muslims, for example, if they are on the wrong Akida. So if that door is opened, if that is actually is correct, if the Sharia or whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders or tells us can contradict intellect, then Christians or those who believe in Trinity, there is no hujjah on them. So be careful, because a lot of people try to or undermines the intellect, and they don't really understand the concept, and they present an opinion that actually open the door against Islam. So be careful what you say. So as we said, the intellectual conclusion that is made conclusively with a conclusive evidence and by proper consideration can never be contradicted by Sharia. Okay, and vice versa. The Sharia is actually in complete harmony. When you look at it and consider all the evidence of Sharia, they are in complete harmony of what the mind tells us. But again, we have to be very careful what we mean by mind, because a lot of people say, yeah, I think about, for example, something, hijab, and say, yeah, back then it was important to wear it, it was customarily, now it is not, and so on, and start making argument about that. And he claimed to be using his mind. That's not using the mind. That's not what we're talking about. That's where he's using what his nafs prefers. That's a different story. That use of mind is incorrect. You cannot use your mind in this way against the evidence of Sharia. What we're talking about when we're talking about the mind rules or the intellect rules is, as we said, the two things cannot be something cannot be moving and standing still at the same time. Something cannot be tall and short at the same time. The part of something cannot be bigger than the most of it, and so on. And we're going to see another examples. Those are the mind or the intellect rules that we're talking about. Nothing happens without a cause, right? That's an important concept in Islam and in theology. But your preferable judgment of something, that's a different story. You cannot use that against Sharia evidence. Sharia evidence prevails any istihsan that you might think about because of your own preference, because you used to live in this country or in that country or whatever. Okay, is that clear? I hope that's clear. So just try to distinguish between preference, what you think about, and you apply your own logical thinking from a preferable point of view to reach a conclusion, and between the intellect and rational judgment that every reasonable person or every intellectual person should agree on. Yeah, I think that's important. Let's take another poll. Starting. Okay, starting now. If debating non-Muslims, it makes perfect sense to rely on Quran verses as proof of your argument. All right, so the answer is no, it's false. I mean, he is non-Muslim, so he doesn't believe in Quran. He doesn't believe that's the word of God. So it's not hujjah, it's not a valid proof that for him, right? How can he? Quran and Sunnah is hujjah for us. So if for example, you are talking to a friend and he's telling you he's Muslim, he believes in Quran and everything, and he's saying you don't have to wash your face in wudu. You tell him no, you have to, and the proof of the evidence is that is the ayat al-Ma'idah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says so and so and so. He will say, oh right, you know what? Thank you for pointing that out. I forgot about it, or I didn't notice it. Yeah, it is. So Quran and Sunnah is hujjah for us, like for Muslims, because we believe we passed that step. But non-Muslims, they didn't pass that step yet. They don't believe in Quran. So you need first to prove to them that the Quran is the word of God, first of all. And let's take this question further. If an atheist who actually doesn't believe in existence of God, again, you don't need to prove that Quran is a word of God or God revelation. You need to start with actually proving that God exists to start with. So the starting point is very important, and the context, the audience who we are talking to is very important, right? So قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Yeah, we believe in that. But if you say that to a non-Muslim, okay, that's your belief. That's not hujjah on me. That doesn't mean anything to me. So you need to start first to prove to him from an intellect point of view that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to be one. You cannot have multiple gods. It doesn't work. It's impossible. And actually that's in the Quran. Quran said that. All right, so we talked about rules of rational judgment last time, and we said that the rational judgment, there are three categories. Either it's necessary or a necessity, impossibility, and possibility. And necessity is something that your mind cannot imagine that it doesn't exist. Impossibility is something that your mind cannot imagine that it exists. And possibility is basically it could be either or. Just because of the time differences, I'm mindful that some people cannot continue, so I don't want to. Let's take a couple of questions, and then maybe we open the floor for your questions, and then we can start next time, inshallah, or continue next time. Okay, so let's look at that one. Examples of necessary rational judgments are choose all that apply. So is necessary from an intellect and rational judgment point of view. Okay, so let's talk about that one. Talk about that one. 1 + 1 = 2. Yeah, that's necessary. It has to be. That's logical. There is nothing in Sharia will come to say no. 1 + 1 is not equal to. 6 is half of 12. Again, that's also a judgment that is based on intellect. And be careful. These are things that, again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this world and put us through the test, all of us, to make hujjah, so that when we inshallah meet him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ja'alna min ahli al-jannah. Those who did not believe, they had enough evidence and they have been given enough intellect to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they haven't, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes hujjah on them, makes argument over them, right? If 1 + 1 is not equal to, then there is no hujjah, okay, because of a lot of things which we're going to cover later on, inshallah. Anyway, human breathing is not necessary rational judgment. It's something that is normalcy, customarily, but it is not necessary from a rational judgment point of view, because in Jannah, for example, inshallah, we will not be breathing air, we will not be breathing, we'll be making tasbih. وَتُلْهَمُونَ التَّسْبِيحَ كَمَا تُلْهَمُونَ النَّفَسِ. So we'll be just saying subhanallah, subhanallah, subhanallah as we are breathing, but we're not going to be breathing. There is no air. We are not relying on air to live, for example. So it's not necessary. It's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it this way in this life. It could have been different, right? Black crowds as well. I mean, it's not necessary. It could be white. Gravity, again, is not necessary. Let's stop here and we continue inshallah next time. Right. We continue next time inshallah. Do you have any questions? Let's open the floor for questions then.